It's a good idea to contact a printer before you get too far into your design project. When you do contact a printer, you're likely going to speak with a sales representative. There are generally two types of sales representatives with printers. One is an outside salesperson who is out traveling to the customers. They're delivering proofs. They're picking up documents, getting signatures. They're also drumming up new business, and they're outside moving about the community. They usually have a partner that is called the inside sales rep or the customer service rep, and their job is they stay in the printing plant and they track jobs going through the plant. So they track it going through the estimation process, as it going through pre-press, as the job's being printed. They'll send you updates. Your main communicator is with the inside customer service rep. And so they generally partner with an outside sales rep so they can keep all the details straight and inform each other, and they work really well together. Other positions in a print sales office that are good for you to know about are the estimator and the scheduler. And so an estimator is somebody who creates the quotes and estimates for potential jobs. So what happens is the sales rep, either outside or inside, gets all the details they need from you, the designer, and they will collect all these details about the print job. You know, how many pages is it? Is it color? Is it black and white? When do you need it? That sort of stuff. And then the estimator comes in and they have software that they can plug in all of these details into their software. So what type of paper it's going to go on, how many sheets it's going to run, and what press it's going to run, and it's calculated to say, well, it'll take this press, half an hour or 5 hours, whatever it takes to run this job. And so it calculates the cost of the press, and it calculates the cost of pre-press people spending their time working with your files. So there's all these details that the estimator plugs into the software, and it spits out a quote, an estimate for you. And usually these estimates can have multiple quantities. So you'd say, I want to know what's the cost of 1,000 copies of this job, or 3,000 copies, or 5,000 copies. And so you can see what the price difference is. And the estimator can work back and forth with the salesperson, which communicates to you, the designer. So it's very rare for the designer to communicate directly to the estimator. The estimator is creating the cost of your job, and so they're kind of directed by the salespeople on what to do. And what to add into your job or to take away from your job. And so the estimator will come up with these numbers. They'll give the numbers to the salesperson. The salesperson will then give the estimate or the quote to you, and then you can look at it and save it and get quotes from many other print shops and compare your quotes and whatnot. The other person in the print shop, which doesn't really affect you until you commit to be printing with them, is the scheduler. The scheduler, so say there's a print shop and they have 3 printing presses, and they can only be printing one thing at a time. And so it takes job A 3 hours to run, and job B is going to take 26 hours to run, and job C is going to take 18 hours, and job D is only going to take 1 hour. And so the scheduler has to take all the due dates, the size of the jobs, can he break the print runs up into different portions, who's going to run first, and what's going to get done and when. And so the scheduler actually has a lot of power in the print shop about what's going to be printed next. And so it's just something to be aware of, is that when you go to get your job printed, it's going to be put into a queue with other jobs that are being printed. So depending on your relationship with the printer, your need, whether you're willing to pay more to have it printed sooner, that sort of thing, the scheduler will be working with that. Going back to your communication with the salesperson, when you're requesting a quote, it's also called an estimate or a bid, um, and you're not committed to it. You'll get these estimates and you can compare them one to the other. Um, but once you commit to printing with the printer, then they turn your quote or your estimate into a job. And so that means that you've basically said, I'm going to print with you, make it a job. So they convert your estimate into a job ticket, and then that job ticket will start to move forward. So what happens is that they're going to ask you what date do you want your printed product in your hands? What date do you want to have your product done in your hands, ready to pass out to your client? And then from there, they'll schedule everything backwards from there. So whether it has to be shipped to you, might have some days of shipping involved. And then backward from there, there'll be any bindery processes that have to happen. So cutting or folding or gluing. If it's gluing, does it have to be dried? If it's being made into books, there's the whole binding process. That takes days or weeks. And then backward from there is the printing time. And then backward from there, they'll have the pre-press time to pre-flight your jobs and run them through pre-press. And then from there, they'll say, okay, so we need your artwork into pre-press by this date in order for it to go through pre-press, printing, bindery, and shipping to get to you on the date that you want it in your hand. So it's pretty critical that when you contact them, that you know when you want it, and the dates can change, and the costs can also change. So when you get a quote, there's going to be a quote for it's going to cost $1,000 worth of paper to run this job. Well, the estimator, when he made that quote, he took the paper prices for that day, and paper prices change almost daily. Not by a whole lot, but over a week or two, they can move up or down significantly. And so by the time your job comes to print, the paper might be a different cost. Or by the time your job, you commit to printing with the printer and say it's going to be a job, then they can nail down and purchase the paper at that time because you're committed to them. And so they'll purchase the paper and that cost stays. So there can be fluctuation changes between the quote and the job price, depending on how you wait and things outside of the printer's control. But even when a job is going through the press, if you ask for a change or there's an error and you need a correction, there might be some changes to the cost of your job, even after what you were quoted. So another interesting thing about print shops is that a lot of print shops like to specialize in certain things. So they'll buy specific equipment to run certain machinery, to create certain products. Sorry, some might be smaller and more suited toward making stationery, business cards, letterheads, and they have maybe some preset pricing for it, so the quoting is a lot faster and easier. Some may be designed more for doing direct mail, where they print your piece and then they mail it directly to the clients, like for ads or something like that. So check with the printer about what their specialties are, what they're best known for, and see if it matches with what your product is designed for. A lot of print shops are flexible to meet the designer's needs, so they can get any type of papers that are available, although a lot of print shops will have their own house paper. They get a paper that they know runs well on their presses, and they order a lot of that paper and they just have it in stock in their shop, and it's usually a little bit cheaper because they buy so much of it. But they buy it because it's good paper and they know that it runs well on their presses, and they'll suggest using that. But they can get you whatever unique type of paper you want. They can do special inks and things, um, even if it's not part of their specialized workflow. They'll still usually be a little bit flexible with it. So for instance, there was a printer in Bellingham, and the client wanted a cover that had a special varnish on it. That printer in Bellingham didn't have the equipment to put that special varnish. It was like a UV ultraviolet varnish, which creates very scratch resistant uh, protection for the cover. And so the printer works with another printer in Seattle that has that equipment. The printer in Bellingham partners with a printer in Seattle that has that equipment, and what they do is they just say, hey, look, we have a job, we want to send this cover down, can you apply the varnish to it and then just send it back to us, and we'll finish putting the book together. And so that happens quite a lot in print shops. They may tell you that this is going to happen. They might say, hey, you want this done to your product, we're going to have to ship it over here to have it done, and they'll ship it back and we'll finish it. Or they might not even tell you. They'll just say, yes, we can get this done, and then they just do it, and it's just included in the cost of your job. So print shops are flexible to getting whatever you want done, although they may share work amongst them, depending on what equipment they have. So when you do talk to the sales representatives, there's a few things you're going to want to have, some information you're going to want to know and have on hand in order to get a quote started for you. So here's some of the basic things that you want to know. And you may not know the answers to all of these at the time that you start, but you can still start the process. You might have to be asking your supervisor or your client some clarifying questions. But basically, you're going to want to know the quantity, how many. If it's a book or a booklet, you're going to want to know the number of pages and whether it's a plus cover or a self cover. So self cover means that the cover of the book is the same paper stock as the pages, where a plus cover is that the cover of the book is a different paper stock as the pages, and they have to add a new paper. They have to add the cover onto it. You're going to want to know the page size and if it has a bleed. So what is the final trim size of the page? You're going to want to have an idea of what paper stock that it's going to go on. And this you'll work out with your sales representative. If the salesperson knows paper that works well on their presses in their shop, but the salesperson also works with paper salespeople, paper suppliers. So the paper salesperson can tell the print salesperson, oh yeah, we've got these new papers, or here's this paper is out of stock, we don't have any of this paper, or the price is on papers. And so the print salesperson will be able to guide you through the paper selection process to what you want for your design goals, and also your cost and the availability of the paper, and what's going to produce a quality product on their press. So it's really important to communicate with your printer about that. You're going to want to know, tell them how many inks are going to be in white. Is it going to be a 4-color process job, which is your standard color printing? Are you going to have any spot colors, any varnishes? They need to know this so they can plan what presses it's going to run on, how many plates they're going to have to make, etc. And then any other bindery operations. Is there going to be any folding done to it, any cutting and book binding or gluing or stamping or any other operations that you want done to it? And with that basic set of information, plus a due date, although the due date doesn't really affect the cost, the due date just sets your deadlines. With this basic set of information, you can start a quote and get a quote estimate delivered to you. One last thing about working with printers is that this is an opportunity to start building relationships. So you may want to choose a printer. Um, you might have different motivations for creating these relationships. If you're really looking for cost-cutting measures, you might try to find a printer that'll do less expensive work for you. You might not like working with certain salespeople or a certain office. You might want a printer that's more environmentally sound, uses environmentally sound practices like environmental inks or papers or recycled papers. A whole bunch of a variety of things that is going to be individual to you and your clients. Um, but you want to build a relationship with the printer over time because it makes everything easier. Um, some basic benefits you might get from building a relationship is that you'll get better service and quality, that they'll spend more time making sure that everything's right. Um, they'll get your proofs to you faster. They'll, you know, uh, communicate with you faster, etc. They might put your job ahead in priority. If you are have a good relationship with a printer and you say, could I get this a week earlier than I thought? And they might say, sure, because they've had good experiences with you. And the way that they like working with you is when you supply them with information and good art files. And it makes it easier for them to print, and it makes it better for you, and you can build a relationship. You may get better prices, obviously, if the salesperson might work to get the prices down for you. It's just less stressful for you and for everyone. It's less stressful for the printers, less stressful for you or your clients or your supervisor, your boss. If you're freelance, print shops are a networking opportunity. So you might be able to find more work. Oftentimes, print shops will be like, hey, we're looking for a designer. We got a customer that wants a product, but they lost their designer. Um, and so it's an opportunity to network. And the print shop can also give positive feedback to your clients and to your supervisor and or boss. So that can help you gain a reputation, gain more business, and or just help in general. So I hope that you learned a few things from this, and we'll talk to you later.